For the longest time, the most powerful tool at work was, well, the one right between your ears. But that has fundamentally changed. We're about to dive into the long, really fascinating history of how we've systematically outsourced our own brains, moving knowledge out of our heads and into the tools we use every single day. The big concept we're talking about today has a fancy name: cognitive externalization. It sounds like a mouthful, right? But the idea is actually super simple. It's just the act of taking what we know and putting it somewhere else. First it was on a page, then on a server, and now, well, now it's inside an algorithm. This whole process has been the engine driving every major shift in how we work. So that really brings us to the central question for this entire explainer. How in the world did we make this incredible leap from a world where knowledge was totally local, fragile? I mean, it could literally die with the person who had it, to today, where we have a tool that can theoretically synthesize all of human knowledge in an instant. That is quite a journey. Okay, so let's rewind. Our story really starts in a world where you didn't read how to do something, someone showed you. This was the era of the master and the apprentice, where all expertise was transferred one-on-one. And this led to the very first great shift, from masters to manuals. And this slide, it just nails the difference, that first huge leap. On the left, you've got the old way, the artisanal paradigm. Knowledge was local, it was passed down directly from a master to an apprentice, and it was always bottlenecked by a single human lifespan. But then, with the printing press, we burst into the typographical era. All of a sudden, knowledge could scale, it was standardized, it was available to anyone at any time. It was a total revolution. A perfect example of this. Just look at medicine. Back in 1858, a guy named Henry Gray published his anatomy, and he essentially codified the insanely complex structure of the human body into one single accessible book. This thing became the Bible for doctors. It completely decoupled medical knowledge from any single mentor and standardized the entire profession. And you know what's wild? The people behind this knew exactly what they were doing. In 1899, the very first Merck manual for doctors spelled out its purpose right there in the introduction. It said, "Memory is treacherous." I mean, how direct is that? These manuals weren't just reference guides. They were a deliberate shot at building a more reliable, external brain for an entire profession. And this wasn't just happening to medicine. Oh no, this revolution was sweeping across every single profession. Doctors got Gray's Anatomy, engineers got Mark's Standard Handbook, and lawyers got Black's Law Dictionary. By writing it all down, knowledge could finally scale like never before, creating a shared foundation for entire fields of work. Okay, so books solved a huge problem: access. But like a lot of great solutions, they created a totally new one. These manuals were amazing, but they were also heavy, they went out of date really fast, and they were incredibly hard to search. So the next great shift was all about moving from these static pages to dynamic conversations with our peers. So let's be super clear about what the new problem was. The bottleneck wasn't about getting your hands on the information anymore. With libraries and handbooks, the knowledge was out there. The new problem was finding the right piece of information in that massive sea of pages. Retrieval, that was the new frontier. And once we went digital, man, the race to solve this retrieval problem just exploded. It was unbelievably fast. In 1990, we got Archie, the first search engine. Just 4 years later, web crawler gave us full-text search. And then, in 98, Google completely changed the game with algorithmic ranking. The pace of innovation was just breathtaking. But here's the thing. Search engines were only half the equation. At the very same time, platforms like Usenet and later on Slashdot were changing who got to decide what knowledge was actually valuable. Instead of relying on a small group of elite publishers, suddenly validation was coming from a whole community of peers. Slashdot even had a moderation system where users could vote comments up as insightful. It was like the crowd itself became the editor. So, we got so good at search that we ended up with what you might call the ultimate first-world problem: information overload. We can find anything, which means we often find, well, everything. And that brings us right to our current era, which is being defined by a new kind of tool, one that doesn't just find information, but actually understands it: the AI synthesizer. And this is where things get really different. It's a fundamental change. A search engine gives you a list of 10 blue links, basically a map to a bunch of potential answers. Generative AI, on the other hand, does the work for you. It's like it reads all those documents, understands what you're really asking, and then synthesizes a single direct answer. It's the difference between a librarian pointing you to the right aisle and a research assistant who just gives you the report. And look, this is not some fringe tech we're talking about anymore. It's not just for early adopters. The data is crystal clear. A whopping 75% of knowledge workers are now using AI tools on a regular basis. This is completely mainstream. It's a core part of the modern workflow. And the payoff? It's real. You can actually measure it. On average, people who use AI are saving 2.2 hours of work every single week. That's almost a full day every month that's freed up from doing boring, routine tasks so you can focus on more creative, strategic problems. But, of course, there's a catch. There's always a catch, right? When we point these incredibly powerful AI models at our own company's internal data, we run smack into a huge problem, something called knowledge chaos. The AI is only as smart as the data you feed it. So if it's learning from fragmented, outdated, or just plain contradictory info that's scattered across a dozen different systems, it's going to give you wrong and sometimes even non-compliant answers. So what does this all mean for us? Well, it means our jobs are changing. Again, we're evolving from being just users of a tool to becoming AI knowledge curators. Think about it. Our most crucial skill is becoming the ability to manage the AI's information diet, making sure it only learns from clean, verified, and trusted data. All right, so that brings us to the future. Where is this whole story headed next? Well, the next chapter seems to be all about shifting from a tool that reacts to us to a partner that acts for us. The next big thing on the horizon is something called agentic AI, and this is a really profound shift. Instead of waiting for you to type a prompt, an agentic system can understand a high-level goal, like launch our new marketing campaign, and then, all on its own, break that down into steps, pick the right tools, and actually execute the entire workflow. And if you're thinking this is some far-off sci-fi stuff, think again. The timeline is shockingly close. Some projections suggest that by 2026, these agents will already start automating complex workflows. By 2028, some experts think models could even achieve reasoning capabilities that go beyond human ability. And by 2040, AI integration is expected to be driving systemic global change. Which, of course, leads to the million-dollar question for every single one of us. As these incredibly powerful systems get better and better at the technical, the analytical, the what of our jobs, what's actually left for us? Well, the ultimate human advantage becomes brain capital. It's about the skills that are so deeply, uniquely human. We're talking about high-level emotional intelligence, complex ethical reasoning, that creative foresight to see what's just around the corner, the ability to actually motivate and lead other people, and truly empathetic communication. These are the things an algorithm just can't replicate. You see, for hundreds of years, our value at work was all about knowing the what, knowing the law, the formula, the data. As AI gets close to perfecting the what, the great challenge and frankly the great opportunity for all of us is this. Are we ready to provide the why?